Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reignite Your Purpose Conversations with Munira. I am Munira Premji, and I am so delighted to welcome you all again on this learning journey with us. So far, we've covered topics on self-awareness, on perception. We've talked about change and resilience. And today, we're going to tackle balance and introduce you to a tool called the Wheel of Life. I am so delighted to have as our guest today Sabrina Habib, the very talented and gifted Sabrina Habib, who is joining us all the way from Kenya. Let me tell you a little bit about Sabrina. Sabrina is the co-founder and chief exploration officer at Kidogo. And Kidogo is the leading childcare network in Kenya. Kidogo does some pretty fabulous stuff. They provide access to high quality, affordable early childhood care and education to low income families. And they do this by equipping women who they call mamapreneurs with the knowledge, skills, and support tools to start their own childcare micro business. Sabrina launched Kidogo in 2014, and during this time, Kidogo has provided over 5 million hours of play-based holistic childcare to children aged 0 to 5 years of age. Sabrina holds a Master's of Public Administration in Development Practice from Columbia University. She has so many awards, it's hard to keep track of her awards. She was named as a Forbes Top 30 Under 30 in 2017, as Canada's Female Social Entrepreneur of the Year by Elle Magazine in 2016, and as an Echoing Green Fellow in 2016. She also was awarded the Unilever Young Social Entrepreneur Award in 2017 and is currently an Acumen East Africa Fellow. Full disclosure, Sabrina also happens to be my daughter, and I am so thrilled to have the opportunity to spend a full hour with her and introduce you to her and have her share her insights on this incredibly important topic for today, the topic of balance. So welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved each of these discussion series, and so I'm really, really privileged to be part of this one.
Well, I love working with you the most. And so the opportunity to have a robust conversation with you is exactly how I want to spend my time. So we find sometimes that as you go through life, that things are out of sync and out of balance. We live in such a high speed, high pressure, high stress world that's easy to happen for anybody. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you may struggle to find balance between your own needs and the needs of your family. If you're single and working all the time, then you might have difficulty finding time to develop a social life. And if you own a business, you may find it hard to manage the competing demands of work and stakeholders. So balance is truly an issue, I think, for most of us. So today, that's exactly where we will focus our time and energy. You will have a chance to examine your life and evaluate how you are doing in the different areas of your life so that hopefully you can start to make choices about where to invest your time and energy. And then we will show you a goal-setting process on how to make that happen. So that's the plan for today's session. Would you like to weigh in, Sabrina?
No, I think that sounds like a really great plan. And I think this idea of balance is so important, and now more than ever during COVID. I think our lives have all mushed into one, all the different aspects of our life, and I think Even the spaces that we used to hold now have all come into the home environment. And I think it's really tricky to draw those boundaries between the different parts of our life and how to juggle each of these components of our life. So I think the topic is so timely right now.
Mm-hmm. And when you say that, what that brings up for me is during COVID and with our spaces merging together, there are some wonderful advantages to that. More time perhaps with the family. And then there are some tremendous struggles with that about how do you separate work from home?
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder what will be the end result of this time that people have experienced. Will it make people want to spend more time with their family because they'll realize the fragility of life and of health? Will it make people want to go in the opposite direction and sell their homes and travel the world? I wonder how people's priorities will shift as a result of this past year that we've been through.
And what the new normal will look like as we move forward. So let me start by asking you, what's balance mean to you?
I think balance, if you would have asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said balance is almost like a pizza where every part of your life is a slice and every slice is the exact same size. And so it's about dedicating equal amounts of energy to each part of your life, your work life, your personal life, your spiritual life, your social life. I think now what I'm realizing, and maybe this is coming with the gray hair and the age and the wisdom or something, but I think what I'm realizing now is that actually balance is about priorities. And it's exactly what you said at the top, which is how do we make choices about what's important to us, and having the one or two areas of our life that we feel like we need to invest in, how do you have those bubble up to the top and have the other areas not be as much of a priority and be okay with that? And I think that component's really important, because I know that I struggled with, if I was investing too much time in a certain area of my life and not in others, I would feel guilty about it. And how do you ensure that you're okay with where you're dedicating your time and your energy?
One of the things that you have talked at great length with me is about time being an equalizer. Do you want to share that with the listeners on the call?
Yeah, I think time is one of the greatest equalizers. No matter if you're rich or poor, whether you're J-Lo or Hazri Mom, we all have 24 hours in the day, 7 days a week, and I think it is what we do with that time and that energy and where we choose to invest it that will really manifest the different versions of our life that we can possibly have. So I think that it's so precious, and too often we squander this time and this energy. And I love the exercises that we'll be doing today, because it really helps you keep those things at the top of your mind and how important the time we have.
I am so very curious, as I know a lot of the listeners on the webinar today will be. We are different generations, obviously, and I almost wonder, from your perspective, would you say that everyone looks at balance in the same way? Because I think I see balance very differently from the way that you do.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it would be good maybe if folks can put in their own comments based on the generation they're in the chat box. But I think it's interesting because I think what I saw of your generation, so like my parents' generation, is you work really hard your whole life and you make sacrifices for your family and for your children, and then you have this goal to retire. And I think I see it in my generation as well in some ways, which is you work like crazy and then you try and save up all of your money for this 1 week vacation that you look forward to every single year. And I think what I'm seeing in the generation below me from just people I speak with, this would be the Gen Zs, I guess.
Yes.
If I'm a millennial, that would be the Gen Zs. So I'm noticing, 20, 23, 24-year-olds who are looking at their first jobs or their second jobs and asking themselves about work-life balance. and it's fascinating because they want the money, but they also want to make sure that they've got weekends free and they're not tied to their phone in the way that I think my generation was when it comes to work. And I find that super interesting because it's almost like, no, you're in your early 20s, like work really hard and then you'll figure out balance after. But I think maybe there is something to learn from different ways that different generations look at balance. Did I peg your generation right, or would you say something different?
That's a really interesting question because I've always thought about balance, regardless of generation. I've always thought of balance not as 50-50. Right? I've thought of balance as sometimes being 70-30 and sometimes being 80-20 and sometimes being 60-40, if I've got my math right. And the reason I say that is because there's certain things that I think are bigger priorities depending on where you're at in life. And so right now, where I'm at in life, work, perhaps, corporate work is perhaps not as important to me as it was, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Now my focus is more around other areas, like spirituality is a really big part of what I value. Self-care is another part that I really value. And yet I know just from watching you that, you're now working on Kidogo, and your balance must really feel like out of whack because of all of the things that you have in the pipeline.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I'm excited to do this exercise again, is because I think it helps you realize that things are out of whack. I think I know that work is predominant in my life, and I think I always make the excuse that it's just another 2-week crunch, or it's just till we get through budgeting season, or just till this grant part is done, and that never ends. And I think that that's a cause for concern when our language is that, and we realize a year has gone by, and really we are in this 90-10 zone, and maybe that works for some people, but I think it's about asking yourself the question: is that working for you in this moment in time?
And when you talk about the 90-10, I think the key is to remember that the goal is to get to 50-50. That is sort of the balance. But if we stay out of sync for so long, then that can become a habit. And so today we'll be exploring, a different way of approaching life and balance with all of you. And what I'd like to do is introduce you to a tool called the Wheel of Life. Now, this is a tool that you would have received as one of your resources when you registered for this workshop. So we're hoping that you have that with you. This is what it looks like. So we're hoping that you have this wheel with you because you will need it as we go through the activity. And so here's more information about the Wheel of Life. I am thrilled to introduce you to a tool called the Wheel of Life. This tool is a great way for you to think about how satisfied you are in the different areas of your life and how you actually want your life to be. The Wheel of Life represents different aspects of your life that are competing for your time and for your attention. What you see is a common example of the Wheel of Life, split into major categories of life, including career, finances, family, health and fitness, fun and recreation, friends, personal development, and spiritual. Now, let's go through each of these categories in a bit more detail so that you have some appreciation for them. Career. Is your career where you want it to be? Are you heading in the right direction? Are you fulfilled in what you do? Finances. How healthy are your finances? Do you have enough income to satisfy your current needs? Family. What is your relationship with your family? Are there relationships you want to cultivate or improve?
health and fitness. How physically healthy are you? How do you feel about your physical health and well-being, your stamina, your fitness, sleep habits, nutrition, exercise? Fun and recreation. Are you enjoying your life? Are you having fun? Friends. Do you make space and time for friends? Do you have a best friend? Do you have strong, healthy relationships? Personal development. How focused are you on personal growth? Are you trying new experiences? Are you learning every day? Do you feel like you're growing mentally and intellectually every day? Spiritual. Do you make time for spiritual practice, meditation, reflection, contemplation? Do you contribute and serve communities that you are part of? Now, before you rush into completing the wheel, consider whether there are other areas or categories that make sense to you in your life. For instance, if you're a student, you may want to cross out career from the wheel and instead put in education. And also, feel free to add categories that make sense to you. For instance, in my wheel, I have a category for home and physical space because that's important to me. Remember, this is about you finding happiness and balance in your life. So the wheel needs to represent and make sense for you. Now, how do you actually complete the wheel? First, review all areas on the wheel of life and make changes to the categories as necessary and as we discussed. Then, rank your level of satisfaction with each area of your life by drawing a line from 1, very dissatisfied, to 10, fully satisfied for each area of your life to show how satisfied you are currently in the different areas of your life. Once you complete the wheel, it gives you a pictorial representation of how you see your life in the moment. And this allows you to quickly identify any gaps between where you are now and where you want to be. Once you have completed your wheel of life, take some time to appreciate it. What areas are you happiest about in your life? This is where you likely scored yourself from 8 to 10. Where did you rate yourself reasonably satisfied? That would be scores from 5 to 7. What areas did you rate yourself really low in? That would be scores from 0 to 4. And just a thought, it's very easy to score yourself high in one area of your life and completely ignore the other aspects of your life. For example, you can spend all your time and energy working on your career and climbing the corporate ladder. But how does that impact your relationships, your health, your well-being? Are you having fun along the way? Those are the kinds of questions you want to ask yourself. And as you look at the wheel, take some reflection time. Are there surprises for you? Where are your biggest gaps in satisfaction levels? And based on this, what 1 or 2 areas would you like to focus on to enhance your satisfaction level? Remember, this is your wheel of life. And so the key is to figure out what matters to you and how you bring more of that in your life while maintaining some balance. Now, let's work on the wheel of life together.
All right, so hopefully you've had a chance now to get a sense of what the wheel of life is. And what we would like to do is spend the next few minutes, have you actually complete the wheel of life. And before you start doing that, the first thing that I'd like you to do is look at that wheel of life that you have in front of you and consider whether there are other areas or categories that make sense to your life that you want to add to your wheel of life. So go ahead and do that. So, for instance, if you are a student listening into this webinar, you may want to cross out career from the wheel and instead put in education. In my wheel, for instance, I have a category which I'm calling service and contribution, because that's an important one for me. So go ahead and add more pieces to that pie. So what you want to remember is this is about you finding happiness and balance in your life. So that wheel absolutely needs to make sense to you.
Shall we start filling it out?
Yeah, Sabrina. And Sabrina and I will do this activity with you. Okay? Now, what you want to do is when you look at that wheel, for each category that you see, rank your level of satisfaction with each area of your life by drawing a line from 1, which shows very dissatisfied, to 10, which shows fully satisfied for each area. Okay.
So I just want to make sure I'm doing this correctly. So, for example, I started with career and I rank it 9 out of 10. So like very satisfied with where my career is going. And I just filled it in that way, right?
That's perfect. So you want to do that now for every segment on the wheel. That's perfect. So what's coming up for you as you're completing the wheel?
I'm actually remembering the first time I did this, and my desire was to put 8 on everything or 7 on everything. And I think, again, back to my definition of what balance is, which is everything is equal, and I'm pretty okay with everything. But I think it's great to do this again because it helps me be a little bit more critical about the parts of my life that I'm enjoying and the parts where I think need a little bit more work. What about for you?
I do this activity probably twice a year, and I'm always surprised when I do this activity. For instance, health and fitness. Given my journey with cancer, I remember that I had scored really low a year ago. And today I'm putting it at a 7, and that's making me very joyful.
I think that's such a good reminder of there's different times in our life where circumstances change things, and what comes up during those times are different. And I wonder, especially now during the pandemic, if this has shifted people's wheel. I think I recall you had done one during your cancer journey, and a lot of these categories didn't make sense for you anymore because you weren't working or the career was on hold, and you had actually done a brand new wheel, right?
You're so right. I can't believe you remember that. So my wheel looked really different. My wheel was a completely self-care wheel. So one segment had walking, one segment had going to the park, one segment had chair exercises. The entire wheel, one segment had eating the right food, because that's where I was in that moment. Nothing else mattered, and I was really not into personal development or finance or anything like that. And that raises a really good point. You can actually use this wheel for different parts of your life. So for instance, you can do this one for work. So Sabrina, perhaps I can put you on the spot and say, if you were to do a wheel of life specific to your work, what might the different segments look like? And this might help individuals who are listening in, who are kind of working in the corporate environment.
I guess I would think about where do I spend the majority of my time, or kind of 8 or 9 different pieces of my time. So I guess like part would be on fundraising, making sure we've got money to operate would be one section. I think managing people, managing culture would be another one. I think kind of operations, KPIs, hitting our targets would be another one, maybe strategic planning. And it's really interesting because I'm thinking about it right now is I know where I'm spending a lot of my time and I know areas that are suffering as a result of it, strategic planning, for example. I know I'm so into the weeds that I often have trouble coming out and thinking a little bit bigger picture. And so I can imagine doing a wheel specifically on work would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the only thing that I would caution is you definitely need a wheel of life, kind of what we're doing now. All the other wheels would be kind of supplementary, if you will. Yeah. But as you were speaking, what was coming up for me was, Stephen Covey. I love the story where he talks about sharpen the saw. And that particular story is about, he's got this woodcutter that he speaks with, who is, cutting a tree. And, it's taking a long, long time for this woodcutter to keep cutting the tree. And he asks the woodcutter, maybe you need to sharpen the saw. The saw is not sharp enough. And the woodcutter says, no, I don't have time. I don't have time to sharpen the saw because I gotta really work on cutting the tree. And I think that's what we do so much with our lives. We spend so much time and effort and energy doing stuff when in fact, if we were to sharpen our saw, i.e. look at our life in terms of balance, chances are we would be able to cut the tree much faster. So it's really the concept of sharpening the saw. And that was what was coming up for me as we were discussing this.
Yeah, I think also it again goes back to energy, which is even when I think about this wheel, where are places that give me energy and what are places that drain me of energy? And anything finance related is a total drain if I have to think about our finances or plan for our budget for the month or whatever. But I think other areas like spirituality gives me a lot of energy. And I think potentially if we're high on the areas, or if it's out of whack, I think that could have issues with not having a sharp enough saw.
And that raises another really wonderful insight, and that is really for everybody who's completing your wheel of life. This is your wheel of life. It's not about expectations that other people have on you. It's about what you need to ensure that you're living a meaningful life. Another metaphor that's coming up for me is, as I'm doing this wheel, I'm thinking that when you've got areas that are out of whack, areas that mean something to you that are out of whack, it's kind of like when you're riding a bicycle, right? When you're riding a bicycle and you've got a wheel and the wheel has a puncture in it, or it's out of whack, chances are the ride would not be a particularly happy ride. The experience would not be fun. So there is something about having a semblance of balance. And again, balance is what you define it to be.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question. So I've done my wheel. This is total vulnerability. Here we go. Here's my life in balance. And I think there's a number of areas that are sitting at the 3 level. And would you say that the goal is to get them up to at least a 5 or at least a 7? 7 is you're satisfied. So is the goal to try and get everything in the 7 to 10 range? Or is it okay to have areas that are lower?
That's a brilliant question. I mean, you would think that, wisdom would be get everything up to a 6 or a 7. But the truth is, it doesn't need to be. The truth is you need to figure out, and that's actually a great activity to do. Now that you've actually done your wheel, think about if you've rated yourself, a 5 in family. For you personally, where do you want to be in family? Are you comfortable with it being a 5, or would you like to see that raised to a 7? So it really is very much a personal a choice. What is the gap in your satisfaction level for each of those categories, and it's about being honest with yourself. So if family, sits at a 3, how does that work for your entire life? So the idea is, yes, you don't want to be dissatisfied in areas of your life. And you also need to determine for you personally, what is the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that's where I think you want to focus on. Does that answer?
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, because you're right. It might not be realistic to be perfect in every area, and so in this moment, in this period of your life, whether you're a student or whether you're a young professional, or maybe you're retired and your grandparents, what is that gap? I love that idea. The focus is not actually on the score, but on the gap between your current state and your desired state.
Perfect. Yes, that's exactly correct, right? So let's take a moment and just give everybody a chance to figure out, what that gap is. And while we're doing that, Sabrina, I'm wondering if you might be able to share your experience with completing the Wheel of Life last year.
Sure. Yeah. So you've introduced this tool. It's one of the benefits of being your daughter is when you learn about new tools, you share them. And so you've talked about this tool for a number of years, but last year was the first year we actually did it, and we did it as a family, which was pretty magical. And I really like this tool because I think, as you said up top, it gives you this zoomed out view of what's going on in your life, a snapshot of where you're at, and helps you figure out where are the gaps and where do you want to focus your energy. And I initially thought this seemed very similar to setting New Year's resolutions, because the outcome of this is to decide, okay, what do you need to do about it? And I since I was little, I've set New Year's resolutions, and I've set the exact same ones probably for 10 or 15 years. Like, lose 20 pounds, learn how to cook 10 meals, read a book every 2 weeks, or whatever those goals were. And I realized that they were set with so much commitment on January 1st, but by February or March they would fizzle out because there were just too many and they were unfocused. And I think what this helped with was really figuring out what are the 1 or 2 key areas that we want to each focus on, and then being able to set a goal around it. And then because we did it as a family, which was incredible, we were then able to hold each other accountable to that goal. And so I think mine was something health related. It was trying to get off this medication I had been on for a decade. And so everyone was able to rally around it. And when I was going through that process, the whole family was there to support. I think yours was to publish your book, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Mine was to publish my book. And at that time, I'd written a first draft. It wasn't particularly great. And then I brought this up, and it was very tentative when I brought it up. And again, the family just rallied around, and everybody jumped in and said, okay, so to help you meet your goal, what support do you need? And how do we make this happen? And, what's remarkable as I'm reflecting upon this, because this activity took us 2-3 hours to do as a family. And I remember there being a lot of vulnerability as we were each describing what our one goal was going to be for the year. But as I reflect on it, what's coming up for me is every single person who had a goal, every one of those goals was actually realized. I was able to get my book published.
Yeah, and again, I think there's so much power in taking your thoughts and putting it down on paper and putting it out into the universe, but then also that shared accountability, the shared support system. And so I think if anyone is doing this exercise, to be able to do it with your family or with friends that you trust, I think there's extra power in that.
Totally agree. The key, though, is how do we keep it alive? That's always a question. How do we keep it alive so it doesn't fizzle away? Because the wheel of life is only and here's mine, by the way, full vulnerability. The wheel of life is only as good as what you do about it. And so for me, one of the things I do is I actually take my wheel of life and I paste it in my home office. I have a copy of it on my side table, and every time I think about where I am spending my time, where I'm investing my energy, I look at the wheel of life and say, is this getting me toward the goal or away from the goal? And it has brought so much clarity in my life because right away I'm able to say, nope, I need to say no to this. Yes, I need to say yes to this. And, it's about keeping it alive. And that's one way that I do it.
That's awesome. It's so funny you said bedside table. I do the same. I have my wheel of life from last year in my bedside table, and so every couple of weeks, months, there's a way to pull it out, and it stays alive. But I think again, because you're not so distracted, and you're realizing the one or two key areas you're focusing on, it kind of just imprints in your mind as well, which is helpful.
I love that word, imprint. So this is only the first part of the activity. So hopefully now every one of you, you've identified one or two areas max that you'd really like to focus on for your wheel of life. The next step then is about how to make that happen, and we have introduced or would like to introduce a model to you called the GROW model. And GROW stands for goal, reality, options, and way forward. So let's walk you through the GROW model, and then we will come back on the other side and actually do a coaching session so you get a chance to experience it.
There are many different goal-setting models out there. And today I want to introduce you to the GROW framework, GROW. This framework was developed some 30 years ago by John Whitmore and his colleagues and is one of the most commonly used goal-setting tools in the world. GROW is an acronym that stands for Goal, Reality, Options, and Will. And the metaphor I like to use to explain GROW is, imagine you want to take a trip. The G, the goal, is where you are going and why you want to go there. The R, reality, is where you are starting from. The O, options, are the different routes and transportation to get you to your destination, including any obstacles along the way. The W is the will or way forward, and these are the concrete actions to make the trip happen. Now let's dig a little bit deeper into each one of these steps. Step 1, goal. I love this story from Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, where Alice has a conversation with the Cheshire Cat, and Alice says to the cat, "Would you tell me please which way I ought to go from here?" And the cat says, "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to." And Alice says, "I don't much care where." And the cat says, "Then it does not matter which way you go." And I love the story because, it starts with understanding your goal, identifying that goal. And your goal is what you want to accomplish. And some questions you may want to ask at this stage are, what is it that you want to focus on over what time frame? What will reaching this goal give you, and how will your life be different? How will you know that you've reached your goal? Step 2 is about reality, where you are currently starting from. This is exploring where you are in this moment and what your current reality is. And this is an important step because oftentimes I find that when we set a goal, we next immediately go into implementing that goal without taking a pause and exploring what this means to us in our present reality. And I think that's a critical step. So questions you may want to ask at this stage include, what is happening in my life in this moment? How important is this goal for me to achieve now? What have I done so far to move closer toward that goal? Step 3 is about exploring options and generating ideas and solutions. This is where you want to brainstorm as many options as possible and gain momentum and excitement to meet that goal. And some questions you may want to ask yourself in this stage are questions like, what are your options? What could you do? What else could you do? What has worked for you in the past? What would someone else in your situation do? What would you do if you had no obstacle to stop you? And a question I often ask myself in this stage is, imagine you've already reached your goal. How did you do it? Step 4, will. This is the last step of the GROW model. This is about your will or your commitment to making the goal a reality. And some questions on moving forward are questions like, what will you do? How will you do it? When will you do it? How many, how much, how often? So this is really about the quantitative stuff. So to summarize, the goal, the GROW framework gets you to think about 4 questions. Your goal, what do you want? Your reality, where are you now? Your options, what could you do? And your will, what will you do? And I love this model. I love all the models that I share with you, but I love this model because it is simple, it is effective, and it is flexible. And as you work through the GROW model, you may find that it's not a linear process. You may move between all 4 components and go back and forth between goal and reality and options. And that's okay as long as you cover all 4 parts. Now let's take some time and work through the GROW framework together.
All right, so the GROW model is just a really neat way to transition from identifying your goal to now actually figuring out a way to make it happen. And so hopefully you've got a copy of the GROW self-coaching questions. And we thought it'd be kind of fun to do a mini coaching session so that you can see how you might be able to do this yourself or with a friend. So again, a place of vulnerability for us. Sabrina, if you might identify one area that you would like to work on using your wheel of life, and I will do a mini coaching session with you, and let's take this wherever it goes.
Sounds good. So I'll pop up my wheel of life again, and I added the desired state as you had recommended. And so I think the areas that I'm weakest on or most dissatisfied with my life right now are around friends, fun and recreation, and health and fitness. I think if we pick one of them, then perhaps we focus on the fun. You said this would be fun, and I'm not sure. I'm feeling more like this is anxiety wrenching, but I'm going to go with the word fun and pick the category of fun as the one to explore.
In that case, I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath with me.
Okay, let's do this. Yeah.
And this is just a mini coaching session. So you picked fun. Can I ask you to identify how you rated yourself in fun and where you'd like to be?
So I rated myself as a 3 out of 10. And I think I'd love to get to a 7 or 6 or 7.
Okay. And what does fun mean for you? What is your definition of fun? If you were having fun at a 7.
I think where this is coming from is just, again, that balance is out of whack, that all my time is spent on work. And I think it comes with running your own company, trying to scale it, doing something that hasn't been done before. You were giving the analogy of a bicycle. I feel like my life is a unicycle where work is the wheel and trying to just navigate life through that. And so I think for me, fun is about reshifting and finding moments to unplug from work, to enjoy life. I think I hold this value that life is a gift, especially after everything you went through, and it just feels like such a shame to not actually be enjoying it. I've said this to you quite a bit over the last few months, that I'm living the life I dreamed of, or even more than dreamed of, and yet I'm not actually enjoying it. And I think if we were to boost that fun from a 3 to a 7, I think I might actually start enjoying the life that I've created.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. What are the benefits for you in achieving this goal?
I think the all-elusive work-life balance, if I can achieve that. I think the benefits also of being able to unplug and laugh more, smile more, I think I've become really serious over the last months, years, since work has taken a focus. I think also I would be a better leader, a better boss, a better mentor if I'm not all consumed by work, if I'm able to take those moments to unplug and to find joy. And I think my quality of life would just go up quite a bit.
And if you've achieved this goal, I want you to hold the fact that you've achieved this goal. What will you see, hear, feel?
Yeah, I see it again as this like a feeling of just like being happy and just I can almost feel my shoulders relax and just laughing more and smiling more and actually enjoying every experience and being mindful of every experience rather than trying to zip through or think of things as all to-do lists that need to be checked off. I think I'll feel this weight lifted. I think I might also be less tied to the outcomes of work. I think when you have fun in life, you're able to just enjoy different experiences, and it helps you be less serious about certain parts that maybe you're too serious about. And then if things don't work out, it's okay because you've got other parts in your life that are working. If you don't get this grant or if a staff resigns, it's not the end of the world because you've got these other parts of your life to balance you out. So I think that's kind of what's coming up for me.
No, it sounds like this is something you have already given a lot of thought to. So what's coming in the way for you achieving this?
Yeah, I've been worried about burnout for the last many months, especially as my husband and co-founder stepped away from the organization and having to lead it by myself during a pandemic. So I think I've thought about this for a bit. I think your sharpen the saw, Covey's example is so spot on, which is just like, I don't have time. I don't have time to have fun, or I don't have time to unplug on a Sunday. I've just got this thing, or I just need to finish this one quick thing and then it'll all be okay from next week. But it never is okay. It's just you've always said that work expands to fit the time given to it. And so I think there's a mental block. I think there's just feeling like there's just no time to stop and actually enjoy. I think it also comes from the work that I do, which I feel very privileged to be doing this work. I work with families that all live below the poverty line, especially during this pandemic when you hear that families are down to one meal a day. And here I am sitting with shelter above my head and food on the table. It just feels there's an urgency to the problem. And so if I were to take time off or not work on an evening, it feels like those hours could be used to dedicate towards helping this cause and changing the system. And so I think a lot of it comes from that as well.
What I'm hearing is a lot of guilt.
Yeah, for sure.
So if this goal is really important to you and you think it would make every other aspect of your life better, and you'd go from being a unicycle to having a more balanced life, and you had the time and you were to sharpen the saw, what are some options do you think that you have to achieve the goal if you had the time?
like how to have more fun. Yeah. I think about things like maybe I find a lot of joy in baking while listening to a podcast or an audiobook. I think about paint by numbers, kind of similar, kind of a solitary activity that gets me immersed in something. I think I'm lacking, and maybe this is somehow related to the friends category, and maybe the fun and recreation and friends are somehow combined, which is I don't have a lot of people to do things with. And I think the pandemic has made that even more difficult, but I don't have a lot of friends. And so it feels like I would love to find fun activities to do with somebody else. Go for coffees or talk about life or go do an activity together. I think that would feels like things that would be fun.
And do you think that is possible in your current reality?
Yeah. I think it just requires maybe a little bit of effort to find someone that's kind of in an outer circle right now and make the effort to go for a walk outside or grab a coffee outdoors. I think there's still a lot going on here. Even though cases are on the rise, there's still lots of opportunities to do things outdoors. So I think all of those things are possible. I think it goes back to that block of feels like either a lot of effort to do those things or kind of this feeling of like, I don't wanna, oh man, that requires so much effort. I'd just rather do my own thing, or I'd just rather just continue pumping out emails. So I think there's that part and the block of feeling like, oh, do I really have time to do this?
Do you think there's a big enough why for you to do this?
Yeah, I think the why is pretty certain, which is I'm afraid of burning out, and I think if I do, then that doesn't help my organization or the cause or anything like that. So I think the why is there.
Because if the why is strong enough, the what and the how is much easier. So what is one thing that you can do this week?
Yeah, I think maybe finding somebody who's we coined this term when I was 10 years old, which is a friend acquaintance, right? Somebody who's not quite a friend, but a little bit more than acquaintance. And maybe calling them up and seeing if we can go for a coffee or a walk together. I think that's something that's doable this week. I think an interesting one for me is also you're not certain of the outcome. You know how you've got this gap and you've got this desired state, but there's no certainty that by doing these things you will actually have the outcome that you wish to have. By having this coffee with a friend, I will actually be able to unplug and de-stress and laugh and smile and find joy and then be a better leader when I come back to the office. I think that's the part that for someone that likes predictability and certainty, I think that's the part, but maybe that's the leap of faith that's required.
Yeah, it's about suspending judgment, and it's about taking that first step and putting it out to the universe. And maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. And that's okay. Welcome to the human race, where you do your part and then you do what's in your control. Again, Stephen Covey, right? You do what's in your control and then you have that circle of control grow and then you leave it. And if it doesn't work, then you try something else.
Yeah. I guess I'm also hoping that right now things feel like work or effort, but maybe after a while it doesn't feel that way. And I think of my brother who, for him, going to the gym or working out is just so innate to who he is. And I'm sure at the beginning it must have felt like effort, but because his goal was so strong and his why was so strong, he was able to do that. And so I wonder if that's often how this works, which is you just start somewhere and the more you do it, the easier it gets.
It's about taking that first step, and sometimes it's baby steps. What's one other thing you can do this week?
I think something I did last week, which brought a bit of fun, was we had these bananas that were going bad, and so I baked two loaves of banana cake and 2 dozen muffins, and then obviously we couldn't eat them all, and so just gave them to neighbors or the Ascari, the security guard downstairs, and that was fun because I think a lot of my fun and joy comes from providing value to others. So I think that was something that I could replicate this week.
And you think that's doable?
Yeah, very, very so.
And how do you want to be held accountable to this goal?
Well, I think for all the people watching right now, that's a really good accountability mechanism. But I think you hearing this, I think maybe if you can just send me a WhatsApp in a week's time and see if I was able to do those two things, that would be great.
Okay. Listen, thank you. I know that this was a place of vulnerability for both you and I, and it was just like a mini coaching session. How did that go for you?
Yeah, I liked it because so super uncomfortable, but I liked it because I think it helps you visualize the end state and then feel it. Like I noticed it, the idea of like, oh wow, joy, I have fun, and laugh more, and so I felt my shoulders come down. So I think when you're able to almost feel what it would feel like, it makes you feel like you're halfway there and want to do it. And then I think being able to get very practical about, okay, what's possible this week, and how will you stay accountable? I think it's a really cool framework and very quick to do as well.
Thank you for that. And so the questions for the GROW model, we've got tons of questions for each part of the GROW model, the goal, the reality, the current reality, the options, and the way forward. And, feel free to have a friend work through those with you, or feel free to, do it yourself. And make sure you have an accountable partner. So what we tried to do today was really give you a framework for the Wheel of Life, so you had a chance to assess where you are currently in this moment, and then another tool, the GROW model, to really think about how to take that leap of faith forward. And I think this would be a really good time to talk about the 315. And Sabrina, can I have you do that, please?
Yeah, so the 315 this week, again, the value you'll derive from watching this webinar is a lot. But to go that extra step is about actually putting it into action. So the 315, your 3 activities to do, 15 minutes each. Number 1, go through your Wheel of Life if you weren't able to do so over this past hour. And think about, again, what are the areas that you're satisfied in your life? What are areas that you're dissatisfied in? And areas that you want to focus on. Number 2, for the areas that you want to focus on, and again, just pick 1 or 2. Don't need to do everything. Go through the GROW model, either yourself as part of a self-coaching or with somebody that you trust. And number 3, share your wheel and GROW model and what you're coming out of it and the thing that you're holding yourself accountable to with 1 or 2 people. And again, it takes that to an extra level, which is about having that support system and the accountability partner.
That's perfect. And the 315 is also in the resources that you will have received when you registered for the workshop. So you don't have to memorize everything Sabrina said to you, because it's right there for you. And we'd like to end, well, first of all, by thanking you all for participating in this session. We hope you found it incredibly valuable. This stuff works. It is a wonderful practice to evaluate your life, at least a couple of times a year and see areas that you want to focus on. Sabrina, just thank you. I love working with you, and I miss these opportunities of not having a chance to connect as closely as I would like. And so this has been a real treat for me. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for working through the activities. I know that I found it really valuable, as I know others on the webinar hopefully found valuable as well. And we'd like to end with our favorite quotes on balance. And one of my favorite quotes is by Wayne Dyer. And he says, getting in balance is not so much about adopting new strategies to change your behaviors as it is about realigning yourself in all of your thoughts so as to create a balance between what you desire and how you conduct your life on a daily basis. Right? So I love this quote because it's about creating balance and living your values and living the life that you desire.
I love that one. It's that congruence or that alignment between what you want and your reality and how you conduct your life and your values, everything aligned very well. That's a great definition of balance, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is from Jacqueline Fitch, from Unfussy Mom, and it's not about balance. It's about designing a work-home family life that makes you feel good, a life you don't need a vacation from. And it goes back to that idea that I think so many of us work so hard and just try and get through the grind of life, only to have that 1 week vacation per year that we anticipate and look forward to. And what if we were to flip the script and really say, what if we can design a life that we actually enjoy living every day? And that 1 week vacation we can still have, but it's not the thing that we're dying for that will keep us alive for the next year. So I love that concept.
Love that quote. So again, thank you, everybody. And if you have missed any of the previous recordings, then you can find them on iicanada.org/videos. And just wanted to give you a teaser for the next session following week, and that is on emotions. And we talk about emotions and the brain and something called the amygdala hijack. So please tune in for that session. And in the meantime, thank you and have a great rest of the day.
We did it.